You're listening and watching Rashkin Report. This is Yuri Rashkin, and I'm very excited because I'm being joined on stream by two real journalist celebrities, in my humble opinion. People who are being quoted as recently as the other day by Washington Post in a story about hacking attacks and hacker attacks, and at the same time, people who have shown Stephen Colbert around the hotel room in Moscow of where Donald Trump stayed. So, I mean, come on. I'm so excited. Irina Borogan, Andrei Soldatov, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having us here.
Yeah, thank you. Hi.
Well, let's quickly take a look at the story that you were in, mentioned, quoted in yesterday by Washington Post, where they're saying that, well, on one hand, the hackers, we can't exactly show a paper trail to Kremlin and to Putin. But on the other hand, it seems like they're all speaking Russian, and somehow they can't attack any targets in Russia or any Russian friends. Why are we like going around and not just saying exactly this is what's going on?
That's a good question. I think part of the problem is that these hackers, they attack not political targets, and that means that, well, probably they are motivated by money, and they're criminal hackers. But at the same time, given how many hackers we have, I mean, in Russia, and probably the biggest number of hackers now live in the country, and also that the cooperation between the West and Russia is non-existent right now. It gives these hackers a sense of, I would say, encouragement, because they can do that, and they could attack some targets abroad, and they could be absolutely sure that would not be prosecuted in their country. And also, I need to mention that the extradition of Russian citizens to other countries is absolutely impossible. So they feel very safe, and of course, to some extent, again, it's encouragement. The other problem is that, and what actually makes it all looks very suspicious, is that Russian secret services have a record of recruiting hackers, criminal hackers, and we have several cases when a criminal hacker ended up being recruited by the FSB and being given the rank of an officer in the FSB. So we have that too, and we have these hackers then directed against Western targets, and all of that makes the situation very, 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 very complicated.
I guess we like to have easy solutions. COVID-19, dreadful disease. Oh, now there's a vaccine fixed, that kind of a mindset, at least in general. Is there like an easy switch we can flip and just fix this problem with Russia?
In terms of cyber attacks?
Yes. Let's okay, you're right. Let's limit ourselves to cyber attacks.
There are so many problems.
There's several switches that would be nice to flip for Russia. Yes. Okay.
So many problems between us. So in terms of cyber attacks, I don't think that the White House knows what to do now, because a lot of approaches was adopted for the last years, and it seems it's all failed. The White House, the United States started with blaming and shaming Russian hackers and Russian government with hacker attacks, and all these people, some of these people were sanctioned, and they were put on the sanctionist lists, and their names, the GRU officers' names and hackers' names who were supportive of them, they were publicly named. And what happened? Nothing. These people, they are not afraid of losing an opportunity to visit the Europe or the United States. They don't have real estate in the United States. They live in Russia. They are very well paid in Russia. They have their apartments in Russia. They travel across Russia and in Crimea, and they're happy with that. So it seems a few years ago, it seems that this approach might be helpful, but now we see nothing happened. They continue their attacks and even enforced them. So even today,
I just thought that shaming only works if people have ethical standards. But if the ethics are not a burden that somebody carries, then you're like, shame. It's not a color they recognize in that gamut. Wow.
That's one thing. But the other thing that we have is legacy of the Cold War, and we all remember. Well, you have to remember that back then there was a thing about Soviet intelligence officers stationed in the West. They cared a lot to stay as long as possible. They didn't want to be kicked out, actually, because they believed that to be stationed in Washington, D.C. or in New York would be probably the best time of their life. They didn't want to go back to the Soviet Union and to miserable conditions in Moscow. They had these problems with their careers. They didn't want to jeopardize everything by doing something crazy or too adventurous. But now we are dealing with a new generation of Russian spies, and especially people in the military. As Irina said, they are not afraid of being kicked out because they are not actually based in the West. They are sent and assigned to go to do something. And yes, they might be sanctioned. And that, yes, maybe the next operation abroad would be impossible for them. But we have so many of these people now in the Russian military, and it's getting bigger and bigger by day, that it's not a big problem for the Russian military intelligence or for any other intelligence services we have.
Is this a situation where we have war going one direction? Like, we don't want to acknowledge that we are under attack because then God knows what might happen. But at the same time, they're attacking us.
It looks like this, yes. Russian hackers are powerful and they attack the United States, and they're still attacking the United States.
So we can't really protect ourselves. Can we do something? Can we spend a whole bunch of money buying new computers? I don't know, unplug computers. What can we do?
Technically, of course, technically it's impossible to get the best protection from hackers because they're sophisticated, they are trained to find any kind of vulnerability in your system, in any system. And of course, you know that there is no ideal system in the world. All systems have vulnerabilities. So the only way to oppose this, to fight this, maybe there are two ways to oppose this politically, which is failed right now because that's not only about, it should not be only about cyber and about cyber attacks. It should be a range. So there should be a bunch of ways how to respond to this politically, not only in the area of cyber. And the second way is direct response, to try to attack back, to fight back. But this is I don't think there is a solution. There is a good solution because rarely cyber attacks are very dangerous because it could paralyze the whole system in the country. It could stop hydroelectric stations. It could stop the internet connection in countries. It could stop transactions. That's dangerous. I think nobody want to follow in this direction.
Do you think that Kremlin or Putin is afraid of anything? Can we confiscate his money or something?
Well, the problem is that we never expected the country to be so sustainable, to be honest. And when the country was hit by the first sanctions, especially after 2014, there was a lot of talk in Moscow that, yes, it's very serious and we can see that, and lots of people hope that it could change the Kremlin direction and many things. But surprisingly, these people, especially people in the Kremlin, they found a way how to use these sanctions to solidify their support in Russia. And sometimes it's really interesting. Like you have, for instance, if you are still talking about cyber, you have these great Russian tech companies. And actually, Russia is quite unique because you cannot find, for instance, in Europe, the real competition for Google or for Facebook But in Russia, you have local companies and local services which are really successful and very popular, like Yandex, you have Kaspersky Lab, you have Mail.ru, lots of them.
Yeah, but aren't they successful because there's no competition, because foreign competition is like pushed out?
They are really good, and they are competing with Google, for instance, very successfully. They are really good because Russian engineer school is still one of the best in the world. So they're quite good. And what happened next? You have these sanctions in 2014. Most of these companies, they lost their standing in the West. So they aspired to be really global. They lost that. What the Kremlin did, they just granted these companies with lots of government contracts, mostly military contracts. And you get it completely different. Now these companies, they're supporting the government because they got this new level of sustainability, of guarantees from the government. And it goes for many things. It goes for the military, it goes for the industries, it goes for financial institutions. Many of these things got some support from the government via government and military contracts. And that made them even more loyal to the government than it was before 2014.
That is fascinating. In conclusion, does this mean that that Russia is perhaps more powerful than we kind of give it credit for? Because we say, what is this country? Look at the size of their economy, but they're investing their dollars in really effective ways to create a lot of damage and havoc. So maybe they are more powerful that in that measurement because they have no standards again.
Absolutely, you're right. It was a huge mistake. I thought that Russia is weak because in the 90s economy was weak. The Russia still had its nuclear power, and Russians were still, and they are still very highly educated people. Technical education in Russia is huge, is still very, very good, and it means that can produce new weapons. It means that can produce new cyber attacks. So that's not like weak country. I don't know. It's not like developing country that does not have highly educated people. This country is full of military specialists and full of good, great engineers who are ready to support military-industrial complex.
Yes. No, it's just great because it's another example of people who have amazing technical skill, but like no principles, no like scruples, and so that makes them very, very dangerous. Thank you so much. You have books out. People should read you, buy your books. Please come back to this program. Andrei Soldatov, Irina Borogan, thank you so much for your time. You've been watching Rashkin Report. This is Yuri Rashkin. Please subscribe.
Thank you, Yuri. Thank you for
Thank
having
you
us.
for having us here.